On behalf of the Dean, say GSMC and KM Hospital, Dr. Hemant Deshmukh sir, our Academic Dean, Dr. Milind Natkar sir, and GSMC MUHS UNESCO Bioethics Unit, I extend a very warm welcome to Honorable Vice Chancellor, Maharashtra University Health Science Nashik, Dr. Dilip Maisikar sir, Professor Russell D'Souza, Head Asia Pacific Division, UNESCO Chair in Bioethics, Professor Ved Prakash Mishra sir, National Academic in charge, Professor Mary Matthews, Head Indian Program and Council Member, and Professor Salagre, Professor Gibbs, all other seniors, respected head of units, faculty, and students. COVID-19 has taught us numerous lessons. It has brought on the forefront many ethical dimensions related to patient care and education. The seminar today will be addressing some of the challenges faced with bioethics and medical education. I request Dean Sir, Dr. Hemant Deshmukh Sir, to address the gathering.
Okay. Here we are ready to go. I think this is a warm welcome on behalf of St. GS Medical College and KM Hospital to all the participants in today's meeting. And what we understand is today that we are having a virtual meeting on the Zoom platform. My warm welcome to the Vice Chancellor of Maharashtra University of Health Sciences and the other dignitaries who are joining on this virtual meeting. This year we had a very great challenge of facing COVID right from the month of March, and the entire programs associated, be it academic or patient management, have given us a very great example of how to actually treat patients and how to actually treat the relatives of these patients on a very different platform. By this I mean that medical bioethics has taught us now very well how to behave appropriately, or what we normally called as COVID appropriate behavior. Now, when I say COVID appropriate behavior, I mean that during this entire pandemic, most of the conferences were cancelled, and it so happens that we are having this COVID-19 which is still lingering on. The pandemic is still not over. When we say bioethics and COVID, it simply means that my attention goes to COVID vaccine, where each and every one, the general population as well as the healthcare workers, are worried about getting a vaccine as early as possible. Most of them are really tired now. They just want to get back to normalcy as early as possible. One thing which really strikes me during this COVID vaccine preparation, KEM Hospital and GS Medical College are participants for two vaccines against COVID. One is the obviously Covishield vaccine, which is being in the second and third phase of trial. And one worrying factor which I have observed here is some of these participants are going to get a placebo, and whether it is really ethical for us not to give a vaccine to these group of patients or a group of volunteers who are not going to receive the vaccine itself. Now, this is going to be a big challenge because on one hand, we are actually trying to get an early authorization from the authorities to see to it that these vaccines are marketed as early as possible and have a upper hand on this pandemic. Now, this ethical issue about giving vaccine to those people who are volunteers and have received a placebo is ultimately going to mean that we are going to unfold or unblind this study, which is again going to be a major ethical issue in this entire pandemic. So I keep this debate open, and we hear everybody. We also dwell on this particular aspect of giving COVID vaccine to the volunteers who are going to get the placebo, and the stage is all open for the entire day. The academic discussions are going to be meaningful, and once we come to the end of the meeting, I will assure you that we had a generally a good meeting from the point of view of COVID-19, and this is going to remain in the history as one Zoom meeting of bioethics, which was on a virtual platform. Thank you so much and welcome you all again.
Thank you, sir, so much. And as you rightly said, this meeting will always lead to more discussions and we'll come to conclusions and solutions through it. I now request Honorable Vice Chancellor, Maharashtra University of Health Science, Nashik, Dr. Dilip Maisekar, sir, to formally inaugurate the international seminar and guide us on the future endeavors. Sir has also been the Vice Chancellor of Yashwantrao Chavan Open University, Nashik, and Swami Ramanand Tirth Marathwada University, Nanded. He was the head of Pulmonary Medicine Department of Shankarrao Chavan Government Hospital, Nanded. He is an alumnus of GSMC, as he is an MD Pulmonary Medicine from this prestigious institute. He's been a member of a number of prestigious committees, which include Finance at the Government of India, Admission Regulatory Authority, Government of Maharashtra, National Medical Advisory Council, National Medical Commission, Medical Council of India, PG Committee, Academic Council, BC Roy Award, ex-member, Maharashtra Medical Council. Amidst COVID-19, MUHS Nashik University has successfully conducted final year theory and practical exams and the central assessment programs. And the first to third year exams are at present going on with the declaration of timely guidelines. Maisekar, sir, we request you to inaugurate today's seminar and address everyone.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, madam. I'm proud privilege to be here on this dais, being an ex-alumni of the KM Hospital and State GS Medical College. Dean Dr. Hemant Deshmukh sir, my mentor, Dr. Ved Prakash Mishra sir, Dr. Russell, Dr. Derek D'Souza, Dr. Salgare, madam, and all the dignitaries, those who are present. It's my proud privilege to inaugurate this international seminar series on bioethics and the COVID-19 pandemic at State GS Medical College and KM Hospital, Mumbai by UNESCO Bioethics Unit is open for the academic session. That's what I declare first. I really congratulate Dr. Russell for conducting number of seminars on this number of workshops about the bioethics. Because of our, you know that all the sessions regarding all exams and everything, we could not participate right now up to pass. But now I just know.
Maria, I think we have lost contact.
Dr. Russell sir is conducting number of workshops, bioethics seminars to various universities and to the various medical colleges. Madam Maya Zindani has, since last almost 8 days, she was constantly in touch with me regarding this workshop. Madam, really thank you for your constant persuasion for this, to attend this workshop and for this inaugural session. You know that the situation about the COVID-19 pandemic, we are expecting the second wave. Already it has been there in Delhi right now, but we don't know what the future scenario will be here and elsewhere in all over the country. Already other countries, number of countries, the things are now, you know, the situations are there for the second wave. This bioethics will definitely, because just now Dr. Deshmukh sir has told, everyone is expecting the vaccine soon for this, and I think the result will get by this February or March. I once again congratulate for these workshops, and I declare this is session for bioethics at KM Hospital is open for the academic session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, and for always encouraging us. Now, with the permission of the chair and Honorable VC, I would like to present an overview of the GSMC MUHS UNESCO Bioethics Unit and its activities. I would like to share the slides.
Maria, can I one word?
Yes, sir.
I want to acknowledge Dr. Dave Maisekar. He's the the nodal head for the state of Maharashtra.
Yes,
and I
sir.
want to acknowledge and thank you and congratulate you for your contribution. Maharashtra state has got probably the most number of units, and we are very, very thankful and appreciate you as the nodal head for the state of Maharashtra for
Thank you.
continuing.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, sir. The GSMC MUHS Bioethics Unit received its administrative nod on 28 July 2015. The unit was established with its first 3D trained members, Dr. Salagre, Dr. Padmaja Marathe, and Dr. Anjali Telang, and members nominated by the Dean from other disciplines. It was solemnized under the MCGM Nodal Bioethics Unit and affiliation with UNESCO Chair on 9th November 2015 at an event held in Topiwala National Medical College Auditorium. Mr. Sanjay Deshmukh, Honorary Additional Municipal Commissioner, and Dr. Suhasini Nagda, Director ME and MH, were handed over the UNESCO Charter and writ for establishment of the MCGM MUHS UNESCO Nodal Center for Medical and Dental Institutions by Professor Russell D'Souza. Dr. Avinash Supe, the then Dean of said GS Medical College, received the writ for GSMC MUHS UNESCO Bioethics Unit. The inauguration was attended by Dr. Arun Jamkar, the Honorary Vice Chancellor MUHS, Dr. Shekhar Rajdarkar, Pro Vice Chancellor MUHS, Deans of MCGM colleges, Dr. Ramesh Bharmal, Dr. Suleiman Merchant, Dr. Ramesh Chaturvedi. And it was in their presence, or in August's presence, that the whole felicitation program was held. Along with this, MCGM also announced funds for the unit to carry out its various activities, as we would see further. With a motto of nurturing ethical values and enriching medical education, a vision establishing highest level of ethical and professional standards in health professional education, practice, and research, and a mission to inculcate the basic ethical, professional, and humanitarian values in medical students and all other health professional students, right from the first day of training, in order to make them not only expert in clinicians, but also compassionate human beings. It was in the newspapers that KM established the bioethics unit for training of medical.
There she is.
So the regional newspapers had declared how KM has participated in training of medical doctors in bioethics. In order to give it a complete structure, it's not happening. In order to give it a complete structure, a formal memorandum of rules and regulations was drafted and approved by the Dean. At present, the unit comprises of 23 members from the faculty of various disciplines, pre, para, and clinical subjects, and the students' wings, which are selected through interviews. The first student wing was formed from the winners of the essay competition on bioethics. Out of 220 members, 20 students that appeared for the competition who wrote the essay, we had selection of 21. And 21st January 2016 was the formation of the Day of Students' Wings. 2016 was also the 90th year of celebration of said GS Medical College, KM Hospital. And in the poster, you can see since inception, all the various activities that we held from the unit. And we can see the beaming smiles of the bioethics student wing members, who's always been there to participate with all vigor and zest in all kinds of activities to spread the message of bioethics, to understand and reason what it means. Fulfillment of training was one of the objectives. All our teachers are trained in 3T, and we held the 3T workshop for all MCGM colleges. Online international certification in bioethics is what the teachers also completed. Few of our teachers did the ethics teachers training course, and they are members of International Federation of Teachers. Along with this, we are looking as a next step now for training of faculty members of various departments as permissible in teaching and assessing bioethics within the CBME modules. Awareness training and understanding of bioethical principles for the students of healthcare professions are conducted both formally and informally. The formal training is conducted for students of all discipline and academic years of nursing, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, MBBS, foundation courses through various interactive modes of role plays, movies, think, pair, and share, so that deep down they delve into the understanding and reasoning of the principle and what is right and what is wrong. Interns orientation program every year holds a workshop where we train them into the understanding of bioethical principles as they move ahead into their career with dealing with patient care, communication, and understanding. Grand rounds are held for postgraduate students of various departments to delve into the ethical dilemmas, to reflect the action, and dwell deeper into seeking the right action in thoughts, words, and deeds. To groom overall in ethics and professionalism, the unit has held workshops on narrative writing, reflection, communication skills and active listening, peer mentoring, psychological first aid. Book releases such as First Do No Harm, guest lectures and panel discussions on the WBD themes and principles of Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Movies are a great medium to develop critical reasoning skills and thinking. Audiovisual quiz, identifying ethical principles through the medium of movies. Debates, for the outspoken ones to listen and reason. To foster healthy environment and understanding, the teacher-student debates. Drama, street play, and expression of art as a form to explore and reflect on the understanding. The ethical values are rediscovered and explored to stimulate greater interest, social sensitivity, compassion through various forms. Short film making. And the World Bioethics Day celebration, which is a grand intellectual deliberation with keynote addresses and panel discussions with stalwarts like Dr. Snehata Deshmukh, Dr. Yashwan Amrekar, Dr. Almeida Fernandez, and more. The special Rangoli, which is by 8 feet by 6 feet, depicting the theme, is an exclusive feature every year. INAG, our annual bulletin, which is intended for UG, PG faculty in medical, paramedical, and nursing alike, conveys the spirit of synergy between the streams of ethics and healthcare. It means a plant graph created by connecting a growing branch without separating from its top. The invited articles are written by students and faculty and guests, and it is released every year on the World Bioethics Day. This year, our celebrations were online with the same zest and vigor, and addition of new events, Jigyasa, questioning the ethics of COVID-19, IDEON, combating the pandemic, storytelling, learning to reflect. guest lectures on ethical issues in cancer therapy and research, ethical issues in transplant, and a keynote address on ethics in stem cell research. No program is complete without the felicitation of students, the prize winners, and declaration of the Best Student Award. All this would not be possible without the members, faculty, and students, both past and present, and the strong support of our Dean, Dr. Deshmukh and Dr. Nadkar, always in all our endeavors of the unit. I also thank UNESCO for giving me this opportunity to present our unit to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Excellent.
And as we move forward now, I now invite Professor Mary Matthews, Professor of Pathology, Kasturba Medical College, Manipal, Karnataka, Coordinator for Center of Fetal and Perinatal Pathology, Head Indian Program of International Network of UNESCO Chair in Bioethics, International Council Member, Department of Education, International Network of UNESCO Chair in Bioethics, to speak about the Indian programs of bioethics.
Thank you, Maria, and distinguished Vice Chancellor, Dr. Maishekar, Dr. Ved Prakash Mishra, our panelists, Dr. Trevor Gibbs, and, Dr. Santosh, and Asia Pacific Chair, Dr. Russell. Thank you for this invite, and just to tell you about the Indian unit of the Indian program of the UNESCO Chair. As the head, I've been very proud of my unit because compared to all other units around the world, we've been doing extremely well with a lot of activities. I'd like to tell all of you that Maharashtra was the first state where we actually took the plunge to start training faculty in bioethics. I think Dr. Maishekar will probably know that we have come at least 4 times to the university to train the faculty, and we've trained probably more than 1,000 just from Maharashtra alone. And we're very proud of Maharashtra because they're the first in India to give us a chance to tell the world or tell India that bioethics is very important in the medical curriculum. So we are always indebted and grateful to the Maharashtra University and the vice chancellors who have come, who were there before and who are now for allowing us to train their faculty. And I'm sure all of you remember at that time, Dr. Santosh was one among our first students in the training who came and attended, and he just took it on in good spirit and set the whole of KEM on fire, teaching everyone and talking about bioethics. So I really commend Dr. Santosh also, Dr. Santosh Salagre, for his active involvement in this unit. When we established the unit, he was very enthusiastic. And we have many units in Maharashtra, but KEM is one of the best units that we've had that has pushed bioethics, and with this, now the CBME and ethics in the curriculum that has been introduced by our Dr. Ved Prakash Mishra, it has actually stood the test of time, and now faculty are equipped to teach bioethics to our students. And I'm very happy because we also established a student wing, one of the active student wings in Maharashtra, and they've taken students. Maria, I'd like to congratulate you because the amount of activities that the students have taken on is really amazing. And I hope and I wish KEM the best. I hope you continue to excel in the field of bioethics, and especially I thank Dr. Maishekar also for listening to our cause, and he was very he approved of whatever we had put forth to him, and he has also been instrumental in disseminating bioethics around Maharashtra. So I congratulate all of you, and I'm very proud, as the Indian head, very proud of your unit. And I hope that we will continue because at the end of the day, it is the future of the young doctors, the budding doctors who are coming. We, as Dr. Russell always says, we may go. In a few years' time, no one may remember us anymore. But at least if we have, passed on this mantle of ethics to our students, then we have done a good job. So I thank all of you, and I wish this webinar success, and thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful webinar, because we have good speakers who are going to talk, especially about what the Dean was talking about, vaccines, which are right now the hot topic. So thank you once again, and congratulations.
Thank you very much, Madam. Thank you for your motivation and encouragement. To continue the proceedings, I request Dr. Naina Ingole, Head Steering Committee, to moderate the international seminar and introduce the speakers. Dr.
Maria, just I want to remember, Santosh, it was in Dr. Maishekhar's university that I launched with the then President of the Medical Council of India the integrated bioethics curriculum in 2015, and then Ved Prakash brought it in, set the ball, and we brought it in law in 2019. So
Yes,
it is MUHS, where we launched it for the whole country with the President of the Medical Council of India, both of us. That was a very big meeting we held in 2015. So very good. I just wanted to remember that, Dr. Jayashree Mehta.
yes, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mario. Without much ado, we move on towards our seminar today. We are privileged to have distinguished experts sharing their views on a plethora of topics such as the bioethics in medical curriculum, faculty development, and health professions education. There is a small request to all the participants. Whatever questions you may have for the speakers, please put it in the chat box, and we will take it up at the end of all the topics. Thank you so much. As highlighted by our respected Dean Sir, COVID-19 is a burning issue currently. And to discuss the ethical issues with human challenge trials in COVID-19 vaccine, I invite Dr. Professor Russell Franco D'Souza to deliver his talk. Dr. Russell D'Souza doesn't require any introduction. I think we all know him very well. But just to highlight a few things, he is the head and chair of the Asia Pacific Division of UNESCO Chair in Bioethics HAIFA. He is the Director of Education International Program, Directorate Asia Pacific Division, Melbourne, Australia. He is the Executive Director and Dean, Professor of Organizational Psychological Medicine, International Institute of Organizational Psychological Medicine, Australia, USA, and UK. Dr. Professor Russell D'Souza. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ingol. Thank you very much. I wanted to refer to what Professor Deshmukh was talking. Vaccines has become a big, the main talk today in all the countries, right? And we have with this a number of ethical issues that we are dealing with. And of course, today I'm going to talk about human challenge trials and come back to that. But I think Dr. Deshmukh, I actually spoke about that in the last one, and that is about the ethical issue about a placebo-controlled study. Now that we've got a couple that's going to be that have already shown efficacy and are about to be approved in the emergency, we will come across this issue on equipoise. And how do we deal with that? So that's another talk, but I'm going to talk today about human challenge trials. This is an important area that we are having to deal with. And so let's look at the issues in terms of the human challenge trials. Now, we've all been talking about the burden that we've been having with this COVID. We started off talking about it, and so we've now all agreed, the whole world, as you say, an urgent need to develop a safe vaccine. Now, vaccine development normally takes years as it goes through several different phases to hasten the vaccine development. So there has been a suggestion, not some time ago, probably in around May, they brought in the concept that we should replace the phase 3 placebo-controlled studies with human challenge trials. What is this? It's about volunteers being intentionally infected with the SARS-CoV-2 to see how the vaccine candidate works, but to intentionally infect a healthy human being with a potentially dangerous virus is contrary to the highest ethical standards in medical research. Experts in infectious disease and public health warn that this pandemic will be with us for a long time unless a vaccine becomes available, and that too soon. Now, how soon can researchers achieve this goal? And the answer to that largely depends on which strategies our researchers are willing to adopt. On generally, the length, how long it will take for an effective vaccine coming to market will range from 12 to 15, 90, 18 months, as short as, and in fact longer. And of course, if they are to reduce that, then one potential strategy is the human challenge studies. Now, let's go back to the history of human challenge studies. This has been going on for for 2 centuries, and some continue today. And in fact, for dengue, influenza, cholera, and other infectious diseases. And our current understanding of the common cold and flu has been the foundations to that has been established by challenge trials. And for all of you who know of Tamiflu, the famous Fred Hayden in the 90s used challenge studies to bring the well-known Tamiflu. And more recently, we see with the WHO and so forth, malaria, cholera, typhoid have been approved and would not have been likely possible without the use of challenge trials. Now, but as far back as 1796, when Edward Jenner proved that giving cowpox to an 8-year-old boy protected him from the infections with the deadly smallpox virus. Of course, this approach raised concerns, but today we still do these challenge trials, but with careful study designs, and of course we have the review boards to maintain and may look after the specific issues on the ethical issues. Now, when we talk about phase 3 coronavirus challenge trials, also known as controlled human infection models, these are essential tools for developing new vaccines. And of course, we want to get a vaccine quickly, and one of the things to bring quickly is to use the challenge trial, because if we don't quickly manufactured, we also run the risk of mutated versions of this virus, and the virus, and so the time is also an essential factor. Phase 3, the challenge trials, willingly participants will receive the vaccine candidate, and once that takes effect, they will be deliberately exposed to the infection of the virus. Since exposure of this virus is now guaranteed, when you expose someone to the virus, we are guaranteed, and it then makes it possible for us to, or for the researchers to judge the vaccine candidates' efficacy more quickly and with far fewer participants than a standard phase 3 placebo-controlled trial. By providing a more rapid signal of efficacy, we then see that these trials can enable earlier decisions about which vaccine candidate is going to be effective, and thereby start the scaling up of what is called the manufacturing to scale process, which is an important part if we are to reach the populations of the world. Now, as we said earlier, these vaccine, you give the healthy volunteer, and they're purposely given the infection, and so we know they have been infected. But if we look at the conventional vaccine trials, researchers administer the experimental candidate vaccine, or they're given a placebo, but they have to use tens of thousands of volunteers and then wait for nature to do its work, a process that normally takes months or years. A growing number of researchers are calling to bring in the human challenge trial. But as I said earlier, this brings due to the ethical issues, there is a heated debate about the ethics of such research. Now, even researchers who are currently involved in the human challenge trials, as you could see from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, immunologists who staged the human challenge studies for influenza, do not support the COVID being used for a human challenge trial being used for the COVID vaccine, because they feel they've made it clear that this virus makes people seriously ill and leaves them with long-term complications, and we do not have an accepted treatment. Now, so that's a group, that is what's happening. On another side, we come off you might have heard or seen the One Day Sooner, an organization that advocates on behalf of COVID-19 challenge trial volunteers. The mission of this One Day Sooner is to advocate on behalf of challenge volunteers, which is somewhat different than advocating for the studies themselves. They're looking at the volunteers, and they talk about wanting to help people participate in challenge studies that would accelerate a vaccine. But of course, they don't want volunteers to take unnecessary risks that are not justified by the important public health benefit or the public benefit or greater good benefit. So that's one day sooner. Now, there are large proponents of to this human challenge studies, and what do they say? It saves most lives. It involves fewer research participants than standard research methods. It requires fewer volunteers, considerably cheaper to carry out, and importantly, it's not tethered to the natural infection rates. and therefore can accelerate progress and bring out determine the effectiveness rapidly if the company or the that's going to bring it out is to invest in bringing in the upscaling or market scaling. On the other side, we have opposition from an ethical perspective. The reasons given are they might put volunteers at higher risk than conventional vaccine trials. Leading principle of research ethics always has minimizing the risk to research participants. When we expose these volunteers to the COVID virus, this would be unethical since there is no accepted treatment for COVID, and this has been a prerequisite for all COVID human challenge studies to have an accepted treatment. Now, you can see there is historical use of this trial. The WHO itself and the National Institute of Health have supported human challenge studies in the past. This has resulted in the development of vaccines against malaria, cholera, and typhoid, as I noted earlier. However, one important long-standing caveat has always been there when you use human challenge research, and this is a prerequisite that there exists an accepted treatment for disease under study. And we see this requirement is currently not met in the case of COVID-19. Now, what complicates all this is, on the May 6th, the WHO, seeing the need for urgency and so forth, they called in a group of ethicists and got a conscientious among these ethicists who reflected upon challenge trial studies and where you intentionally infect the research participant and looked at the question, can this be ethically accepted? So after this deliberation, the WHO on May 6th published this saying it is ethical if we can have a list of ethical criteria for the acceptability of such studies as COVID. But importantly, they failed to mention the long-held requirement that an accepted treatment as a rescue should always be a prerequisite. Now, the WHO brings out 8 criteria saying this is, if this criteria is met, then we could, and you could see all of them there, but for out of time, I'm going to focus only on a couple of them just to give you your thoughts. The second criteria mentions, importantly, the potential benefits and risks should be compared with other feasible study designs, and risks should be minimized after comparing it. Now, if you take that and compare it to the standard method of studying these vaccines, which is the placebo-controlled one, the risk of subjects in challenge studies would indeed appear to be considerably greater because you are infecting a healthy volunteer. And so the risk is much greater, as some or many participants in a standard placebo-controlled study may never fall victim of the disease under study. So even there we see criteria 2, or the second criteria, is questionable. Then comes what is called risk minimizing strategies. The WHO has listed 3 that should be considered if this is to be used. One is selection of low-risk participants, and the second is reducing the number of participants wherever feasible, using a smaller number. And the third is the challenge the challenge conducted should be done one by one with the titration of the vaccine, of the viral dose for each of these volunteers in the study. Now, when you look at this, the first two strategies indeed reduce the overall risk to the group of enrolled participants taken as a whole. And only the third criteria involves individual risk, where a person who's being injected with the pathogen, we have to titrate it and so forth. And this is important because we know that this virus causes serious illness and indeed can be fatal with us not without an available rescue medication. Now, you see the issue becomes even more complex when on the 6th, the WHO puts this out. On the 7th, we have the AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition Statement on Ethics in COVID-19 vaccine, in particularly the challenge studies. They come out saying they acknowledge the WHO statement and how the articulation of those important criteria or 8 criteria for the ethical use of clinical challenge studies. But they go further to say that that statement omitted the most important one: until there is an approved treatment, a challenge trial with a potentially and yet untreatable pathogen is unacceptable. So this is what where we are faced with a dilemma. So this is where I'm going to put this to all of you, and we'll talk about this in the end. Let us look at the volunteers saying yes, they want to do this, and this is what we put the issues that are there. Now, the question being asked: can volunteers be sufficiently well informed of the risk? We do not know the long-term effect of this pathogen, of this illness. We do not have a rescue medication, and we know it can be fatal. So asking young and healthy people to participate in these trials and then allowing them to do so is asking and then allowing them to do something that could harm not only them but their loved ones in ways that they cannot possibly be expected to grasp. And if they knew, that might change the way that this whole thing could, their willingness to be involved. And even if some of them could grasp these things, how can we possibly tell which of these people are the ones who can grasp it? Again, this is something that was brought up in the Australian National University. So the issue about informed consent comes up here. Take, for example, there's a great interest in participating in challenge study. At some time ago, it was 35,000 people were readily or volunteered and waiting to take on the challenge studies. And they have given altruism as a reason. This is in the United States. But there is no way of us knowing how well informed these individuals are about the risks and benefits of participating, or even whether they are indeed altruists. Remembering the usual practice in medical research with healthy human subjects is to pay them for their participation, and at times this becomes significant, and no time better than the current time, it is certainly paid significantly. And I'll tell you why this leads to. Now, the Oxford Astrazeneca trial, as you all will know, had been stopped a couple of times, but the last one being with the transverse myelitis. But it has restarted. Now, in order to catch up time, they have moved to the human challenge trials. And interestingly, we see and our Professor Trevor might be aware that it's 4,000 pounds is the what's paid for a volunteer taking part in a human challenge trial. I think in Australia they brought it there too. It's $14,000. Now let's look at another import. So I've brought up the issue of informed consent. Another important issue is social justice issue. From standard practice, it's virtually certain, and that we don't need to say it's virtually, it's already there, because it was advertised, it was shown on TV here, that monetary payments, which may be considerable, indeed serve as an inducement to enroll. The likely result of that is you'll have a disproportionate number of volunteers would come indeed from this lower lower income brackets. And no time as this time the world is facing the catastrophe. We see people with lost jobs from the pandemic, and certainly this will be making them more vulnerable to this inducement. And indeed, if we take United States, or in particular United States, but much of the Western world, it is likely that many volunteers would be from the lower socio-economic members. And when you take some of the evidence we have, when we move to that strata of society, then we also see racial and ethnic minorities. And this then raises serious questions on social justice. So we then look at, so we have these two important areas, and then the Council for International Organizations of Medical Sciences Ethical Guidelines for Research. They've come out with advice on human challenge trial studies. They suggest that some risks cannot be justified even when the research has great social and scientific values, and adults who are capable of giving informed consent would give them voluntarily informed consent to participate in the study. Is this appropriate? And they take and cite the examples of Ebola and anthrax. So I'll put this to you. The trials have started. We know that human challenge trials are going on, and I've put the WHO has said it's ethical after the deliberation and reflection of a group of ethicists. On the other side, the Aid Council says it isn't till we get a treatment. So now I'm going to say that what are we left with? A quintessential ethical dilemma. And this centers I put this forward for you to think. Is it permissible to intentionally inflict serious harm on a few for possible benefit of many? A very important dilemma that we face. With these several vaccines already in the pipeline, the current state, a disproportionate number of minorities or poor people are already are likely and probably already enrolled. And of course, a justifiable rush to begin the human challenge trials for a grave disease that lacks an effective treatment. Is this ethically justifiable? So I'm going to leave you with answering these questions yourself, to look at how do we, how is it ethical or is it not? I've placed all the facts to you. And I'll leave you with this from Josh Morrison, founder of Weightless Zero. It may seem counterintuitive to think of urgency and caution in the same breath, but even those who oppose challenge trials without an identified rescue therapy must admit once such a therapy exists, it would be better if challenge tracing was ready to use rather than lagging far behind, because anything less is reckless behavior that endangers people who will die without a vaccine in the future. And not only that happens, it also dishonors the sacrifice that challenge volunteers stand ready and willing to take. Just Morrison, something for you to think. I leave you with these thoughts, and we could discuss it later on looking what human challenge trials. The Astrazeneca has moved to that, and there are several others that are taking on this phase 3 using the human challenge trials. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I'll stop with that here now. Thank you.
Corona has brought many changes in which we manage a patient. Similarly, there is a big difference in the way we vaccinate. Thank you, Dr. D'Souza, for highlighting the ethical dilemmas in the vaccine trials, especially in view of the urgency of requirement and less time available for the same. Also for explaining the ethical pros and cons of human challenge trials in such simple terms, especially in the absence of accepted treatment for COVID-19. Thank you, sir. Again, I would like to inform all the participants that all the questions we'll be taking at the end of the session, end of all the lectures, and please write your questions in the chat box. Thank you so much. In the new competency-based medical education, bioethics has become an integral part of our curriculum, and EdCom modules have become a part of routine teaching, learning, and assessment methods. For discussing the bioethics in the medical curriculum, who better than Professor of Excellence, Professor of Eminence, and Professor Emeritus, Dr. Ved Prakash Mishra. Conferred with the prestigious Dr. B.C. Roy National Award for the year 2016, and conferred with the DSc Honorary by 5 Indian Health Science Universities and 1 DMSc, again honorary by Indian Health Science University, in recognition of his selfless services rendered to the cause of medical education. He is currently the Principal Advisor to Venerable Chancellor and Krims Karad, Pro Vice Chancellor of the Datta Meghe Institute of Medical Sciences, Nagpur, National Head of the Academic Program of Indian Program UNESCO Chair in Bioethics, HAIFA, Member of the International Committee for Bioethics for Asia Pacific region, Advisor Human Ethics Committee Association, Bangalore, Dean Academic and Accreditation Board, National Indian Medical Association, New Delhi, Director Professor in Advanced Physiology, Professor of Eminence, Excellence and Emeritus with 5 health sciences in the country, Chairman National and Medical Education Board, IMA Headquarters, Member Advisory Board in 8 universities across the country, and Convener Expert Group of National Board of Examination, New Delhi. We are very privileged to have Dr. Ved Prakash Mishra with us today. Welcome, sir, and over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Naina, for your kind, benevolent words. With all humility, I rever them. Learned Honorable Vice Chancellor of Maharashtra University of Health Sciences, my young brother, respected Dr. Dilip Maisekar, the learned Dean of GS Medical College and KM Hospital, Dr. Hemant Deshmukh, pioneer and mentor to all of us for Bioethics South Asia Pacific region, learned Dr. Russell D'Souza, respected Dr. Trevor Gibbs, Matthew, the head of the Indian program, my esteemed fellow speaker, Dr. Salagare, Madam Maria, Derek D'Souza, various participants, members of the teaching faculty, esteemed members who have joined this webinar, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to record my sense of thankfulness and gratitude to St. GS Medical College and Bioethics Unit HAIFA for giving me this prestigious opportunity of being part of this webinar and sharing my very vital theme, which has a great impetus and imperative in the present situation that world is plagued and humanity is put into. Ladies and gentlemen, the core component of the entire perspective of human civilization in the context of civility has been that ultimately there has a sense of humanization that has to pervade. This humanization has to be a part of the practicing profession as well. The nobility contemplate to be there in the health profession, the sagacity and the sanctity which is expected to be imperative outcome of it, the equity and equanimity which is expected to be the hallmark of it, more so the socialization which is expected to be the soul of it. If all these are required to be worked out, believe me, ladies and gentlemen, what Socrates has said turns out to be true. I'm wanting to recall Socrates' statement 5,000 years before, when he said, what is morally wrong cannot be politically right and legally just, unquote. Anything which is expected to be being right, and more so, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to say so, it is not just enough to be right. The need is that one has to be righteous. And therefore, a transition from being right to righteous context of life, including the medical profession or the health profession, cannot be at the cost of being non-ethical, non-moral, and for that matter, bereft of bioethics. It is with this paradigm, it is with this core consideration that I am wanting to put across what I am wanting to discuss with you. Keeping this in mind, humanization of medical profession, socialization of medical profession, working out the entire essence of it being of the humans, by the humans, and for the humans. That soul of nobility, the concerns of ethicality, the contours of morality, and the incorporation of value ethos to be incorporated and inbuilt into it, how exactly it is to be attained. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, when the competency-based medical education was being structured by the Academic Council of the Medical Council of India, which I had the fortune of heading with the Honorable Vice Chancellor as one of the members associated with me in the said Academic Council, it was an inevitable thought which was always uppermost that ultimately what we call as the affective domain of the curriculum, be it communication, be it behavior, be it professionalism, be it the contour of commitment, be it the concern of responsibility, be it the sense of accountability, and all these dimensions ultimately standing with patient, person, profession, professional, and community as a whole. How that has to be put across, how that has to be built into. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, what we today know as the ADCOM was the modality which was conceived with active participation of experts like Dr. Avinash Supe, the former dean of the very prestigious institution. I would like to recall not only association with my mentor, Dr. Russell, but one of the key contributions which I would never be in a position to fail. And perhaps if I do not acknowledge this, this country of yours and mine will be failing in that duty. We had worked out the entire structured curriculum to be incorporated into the competency-based mode in the form of ATCOM module, and it was COM which was conceived. It was in discussion with him that he advised that this ATCOM module should be converted into a small added incorporation to be inbuilt into it, and that will be the various bioethical considerations. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, that particular broadened ambit of ATCOM module, as advised by Dr. that Medical Council of India, through its academic council headed by me, gave birth to what we know as ATCOM module, where A is for attitude, ET is for ethics, and COM stands for communication. It was a gigantic task meager structuring would not have done. Lofty objectives, lofty ideas do not get translated into reality until and unless we have stout shoulders to carry them on. Therefore, it was imperative that faculty development program had to be structured. And therefore, the faculty development program, which was originally envisioned way back in 2009 during the Platinum Jubilee celebrations of Medical Council of India, in 2015 onwards, it was vested with the responsibility of training the faculty through the aegis of nodal centers designated in the country, including the center at St. GS Medical College, EdCom module orientation of the various full-time faculty in various medical schools. And today, I'm very happy to share that nearly 65% of the faculty across the medical colleges in the country has been trained through the faculty development program on the various contours and ages of EdCom module, launch of competency-based curriculum, incorporating EdCom module in it from the academic year 2019-20 is a matter. What exactly has been worked out, all of you are aware, but I'm just wanting to recall in order to give a brief sketch of it. The 4 phases of the competency-based curriculum, the entire EdCom module spreads over all the 4 phases, 4 curriculum. Competencies have been structured. 54 competencies have been contemplated. And then for these competencies in each phase, modular structuring has been done, of which phase 1, that is first year, the 5 modules with an allocation of 34 hours has been structured. Second is 8 modules with 25 hours. Third is 5 modules, 37 hours. Third is 5 modules with 25 hours. And finally, 9 modules of 44 hours, making 54 competencies through 27 modules, ending up in 40 hours in 4 phases, linked with the entire frame of teaching, learning, assessment, evaluation, including there too. Blessed and merged with the entire horizontal and vertical integration in the competency mode, so that it becomes an integral of teaching and learning. It is not a segregated mode that the things are to be put across in one go, and then the interlinking thereof into the various contours, subjects, and areas is not worked up. It has been absolutely a free-flowing program, scheduled, structured appropriately, spreading over all the 4 undergraduate medical curriculum. And phase 1 having been already completed, it has turned out to be one of the key benchmarks in regard to orientation of the medical undergraduate students onto these various areas which will be of vital nature and significance. Ladies and gentlemen, having said so, what I'm wanting to put across, the EdCom module which has been built in and which has been incorporated, we took an exercise of comparing the EdCom module which has been incorporated into the Indian competency-based curriculum with the entire Universal Charter Declaration of 2005 on bioethics and the various principles which govern the professional qualities as to whether we have been able to reflect them in entirety or not. And therefore, we took an exercise. It was in the form of a doctoral degree exercise. How the findings of the same are out. And why I'm in a position to say so is because I, as the supervisor and the author, the modified EdCom module that we have envisioned into that particular study stands copyrighted today. And therefore, I'm putting that across as well in all humility, that what we have been able to incorporate, it definitely calls for a certain degrees of augmentation in order to make it totally commensurate with the Universal Charter Declaration Charter that has been made, and the entire gamut of the professional, the principles which are pertaining to the profession, which are applicable to the profession, they are reflected so that the teaching and training and the entire incorporation is not only in a way nationalized, but it is totally stick in character. And therefore, what has been advocated in terms of that modification, in those 4 phases, we have proposed that there are nearly in 3 phases, not in the first phase. First phase remaining what it is, but then bioethical inclusions that have been reflected in the ADCOM module, there are certain yawning gaps. The of bioethics is not incorporated. The reflections which are generated out of the Belmont report and how exactly the humanities and the humanities education to be worked out, training and learning of medical profession is not incorporated therein. Therefore, we have worked out in terms of the update that has been envisioned to be that in phase 2, there must be 2 more competencies which must be added, which will be dealing with the historicity of bioethics in regard to principles incorporated in the Universal Declaration and Charter, resulting in addition of 2 competencies and resulting in additional hours on the basis that each of the competency will be requiring 6 hours of teaching works, which will be including the various modalities structure. In phase 3, we find that we came to a conclusion that there are 3 important principles and the mandate there too, which have not been echoed in the ADCOM module. And they are that we have not talked about the disclosure of medical errors in part of the bioethical considerations. That is one omission which is not in conformity with the principle. The second is the of confidentiality which are required to be dealt with. And the 5 important dimensions which are interlinked, they are required to be completed in their totalistic essence. And the third important aspect is duty dispensation in bioethical considerations is okay. The mandates which have been vested in are understandable, but there is something which is called as the most important leading proposition, and that is of fiduciary duty. And therefore, the concerns of the fiduciary duty, the ambit of the fiduciary duty, the various modalities which are encompassed in the fiduciary duty, that even today remained outside the ambit of the ADCOM module, they need to be brought in phase 3. And therefore, for these 3 important aspects, 1, the voluntary declaration of medical errors. Number 2, the most important aspect of broadening the ambits of coverage of potentiality as a modality. And number 3, ambit, authority, jurisdiction, nature, and dispensation of fiduciary duty. These are the 3 important competencies which are required. I mean, the confidentiality will need 2 competencies. Therefore, 4 competencies are to be added, resulting in addition of 24 hours of workload in phase 3. And in last phase, that is phase 4, there are another 4 important competencies which have been suggested in terms of the module and what exactly they will be. COVID-19 itself has opened our eyes that any pandemic will raise several ethical questions, and there will be several ethical dilemmas. Therefore, the ethical dilemmas which arise during a pandemic, are they not the competency which are required to be covered? And therefore, the ethical dilemma which has been incorporated, they need to be broadened in the context of ethical dilemmas which are required to be dealt in the context of an epidemic like COVID. And therefore, that should be incorporated for the purposes of making the decipherance and learning aptitude of the learner to be very loud and clear. The second important aspect is we have talked about the patient relationship. We have talked about doctor-doctor relationship. Important aspect which have to be further dealt, especially in regard to the conflict of interest, is doctor-industry relationship, especially the profession and industry relationship. That is something which is required to be defined with a greater degree of care and clarity. Another important aspect is the autonomy, patient's autonomy part. The various dimensions which have been depicted in regard to autonomy in the Universal Charter, they need to be covered. Patient's autonomy is not covered, but the 5 cardinal dimensions which have been incorporated in the Universal Charter, they need to be totalistically incorporated. Therefore, there is a scope for broadening the competency pertaining to the patient's autonomy. And the 4th important aspect, which is another area, and that is death and the various concerns which are there associated there too, they also need to be built in. And therefore, taking into consideration these another 6 important, the 4 important competencies lead to each one of them required to be added. And that will take another 24 hours of teaching to be incorporated. As the modified ADCOM module, which I am putting across before this learned gathering for the purposes of decipherance, is that in phase 2, there will be 2 competencies and added workload of 12 teaching hours to be added. And phase 3 and 4, 4 competencies each, resulting in 24 hours of teaching workload each, meaning that the present workload of EdCom module, which is 140 hours, it needs to be augmented to in the segregated phases by incorporation of 60 more hours of teaching, making it to a total 200 hours of the teaching workload in terms of competencies, resulting in to the 54 competencies which are there as of now. There will be another 10 competencies which making a total of 64 competencies and the total teaching hours allocated in 4 phases instead of 140 to be 200 working hours. Ladies and gentlemen, ultimately when we are talking of bioethical principles, the important aspect is the learner is expected to be trained and oriented in the modality, style and decision making. Contemplated that ultimately society and every participant in the society will be required to be answering moral questions. In order to answer those moral questions, there will be a need for development of what he designated as moral competence. And that is exactly called as the moral power of the society. My gratitude to Professor Russell for really rising to the occasion and guiding the entire shape of things. Today, EdCom module is operationally implemented, but I am submitting that EdCom module requires to be further updated in the context of these concerns so that we are able to make that EdCom module absolutely internationalized in the context of the attributes and the core competencies which have been World Federation of Medical Education, commensurate with the objectives which have been linked out. That what we need out of the graduate program is confident, competent, concerned, compassionate, registered medical professionals who are good clinicians, who are good professionals, who are good communicators, who are absolutely capable of leading the health team, and finally they are lifelong learners. If this ambit is to be worked up, then perhaps there is a definite degree of augmentation and buttressing. And therefore, in that context, the same I am submitting this to this learned gathering for its critical appraisal. Thank you very much for patient listening and giving. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It is always a pleasure to hear you talk. I would like to especially thank you for highlighting the challenges which were there in introducing the bioethical principles in the medical curriculum, the training of the teachers required, and the challenges in introducing the EdCom module in CBME. As you rightly said, there are 54 modules which had to be introduced over the 4 phases of MBBS, and it was indeed a challenge. Thank you so much, sir. I would again like to inform the participants to please put all the questions in the chat box. Thank you so much. For any student, department, institute, university or country to progress, the faculty is the key and most important resource. With the changing technology, emerging diseases like the COVID and public health requirements, it is imperative that the faculty development is a continual process. And to discuss the importance of faculty development in medical education, I invite Professor Trevor Gibbs, who is currently the president of the Association for Medical Education in Europe, as well as being an independent professor and consultant in medical education and primary care. He holds the position of WHO consultant in medical education, adolescent health and primary care, senior international development officer for the Association for Medical Education in Europe, educational consultant for international affairs in Scotland, and educational consultant to WOMCA and the World Federation of Medical Education. He writes extensively on the subject of medical education with a special interest in curriculum development, assessment, and the social accountability of medical schools. Over to you, Dr. Trevor Gibbs. Thank you.
Thank you very, very, very much. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm actually incredibly honored to be here with you among such distinguished guests and a very large audience. and I can hope I can do justice to my inclusion. First of all, I just want to say congratulations on the way things have been moving forward. I've been fascinated by the talks this morning. Absolutely fascinated, and there's some very important points there that we mustn't forget. It's a shame that we can't spend almost a whole week together discussing all those. It'd be very, very important. My name's Trevor Gibbs, and as I've been introduced, I'm going to talk about this constant problem that we have of faculty development. Just for clarity, I just declare no conflict of interest other than an absolute passion for faculty development and a passion for medical education. I'm going to talk about faculty development, and we can look at a definition 30 years ago now, any planned activity to improve an individual's knowledge and skills in areas considered essential to performance. And people say to me, oh, that's CME and that's CPD. Well, I don't believe it is, because I think it's something much, much different. We've heard extensively from Russell and Dr. Vedprakash this morning about the importance of bioethics. And Dr. Vedprakash really superbly enlightened us with the core competencies required and the development of those core competencies if we're going to deliver bioethics in a curriculum. But you know, it's not only just developing the core competencies and describing them, it's how we teach them, how our faculty teach them, how our students learn from them, how we assess them, and in what way do we structure them within the curriculum. And this is where I think faculty development is important. If we don't have the right faculty to do that, then those competencies just remain competencies. We've got to develop them. We've got to leave our footprint as we leave medical education, as we leave these shores. We need to create fit for purpose, fit for practice, practitioners ready for the real world to deliver all what we're talking about today. One of the things that I worry about is, ask particular questions. I want to explore those particular questions, say, so why do we need faculty development? Well, sadly, it's because we not do education well. We do not do education well. As I travel around the world, I see some remarkable changes in medical education, but I still see over at least 50% of the schools that I visit still historically teaching the students with very little learning going on. And that's because we don't think about faculty development. We still live in a world of educational ignorance. And I apologize for those people and those faculties that have changed. But my observation is that we still need to change. We have this strange concept that you are a doctor, therefore you can teach. Even the word doctor comes from that Greek word of to teach. All doctors can teach, people say, but can they? I don't believe they can. Just because you are a doctor, you can tell the facts, you can explore your thinking, but whether in fact the students learn anything is another matter. I don't think they do. And I think we've got to really explore this concept of what is teaching and what is it that the students learn. Sadly, we give the students too much to learn. We continue to do this. We continue to overload them with science, much of which they never use, and forget about practice in the real world. It's no point in overloading our students with science if they can't apply that into the real world. And that science is changing. We're changing from pure knowledge and skills to the affective domain. How do we apply that science? How do we feel? How do we conduct ourselves as we apply that science? Sadly, we still hide our head in the sand when we get it wrong. We blame the student, even when it was our fault. We blame the student for failing exams. We blame the student for not listening. But are we being good at promoting our cause? Are we being good at setting assessment properly? No, we're not. So we've got to get it right. I believe that not only is health professions education something special, but so are the faculty who deliver it. And again, as I travel around the world, I see that many universities are failing to recognize our teaching faculty, failing to recognize that they're essential, need to be cherished, supported, and scholarly rewarded. And I suppose monetary rewarded at the same time. We forget that if we didn't have students, we didn't have institutes, we wouldn't have institutes, we wouldn't have medical students. We cannot just go on research alone to finance our universities. It's the students that matter. And we actually get a lot of money from our students, but we forget about how we develop them. The money overrides very often many things. So again, another question, why do we need faculty development? Because we live in a dynamic world of change. I think it's interesting to think back. If we projected ourselves back 20 years, we would not be having this conversation on the bioethics, probably 20 or 30 years. We would not be having this conversation on bioethics. We didn't think about what it was mattered. We didn't think about patient safety. We didn't even think about patient safety when us letting our students loose on them. But now we have simulation centres that help develop clinical skills. But we lived in this dynamic world of change, real strongly dynamic world. The world and society is rapidly changing from this beautiful world where we have lovely family units, we look after our elderly, we look after our children, to a world which is society is fractured and completely complex. And I apologize for anybody who's seen some of these slides before, but they are my favorite slides. That one on the left, typifies the world that we live in, a fractured world, it's stitched together, it's a sticking plaster world, and the poor doctor has to try and heal it. We don't look after our elderly, we don't look after our children. Equity and equality of access to healthcare is not even. We live in a very uneven world of equity and access to healthcare. And of course, good old COVID has come along and put a lot more pressure on us now. So we must respond to new problems and quickly. We must be equipped for the new world, our new normal, whatever that is, because people talk about the new normal. I have no idea what that means. I have no idea what it means because we cannot at the moment predict what's going to happen in the future. We need to be as dynamic as the world we live in. Another question, why do we need development? Because the world of medical education is changing rapidly. Not that long ago, 200 years, we were into an informative way of teaching where we just told the students what they needed to know. And they regurgitated that, literally regurgitated it in an exam, and they passed their exams. Not quite sure what the standards were, but they passed their exams. We've moved now in this last sort of quarter of a century into formative learning, which is much more about sharing. It's much more about caring for the students, bringing the students on board. It was a formative process where we talked and we encouraged the students to learn rather than just telling them. But now we've moved into this massive world of transformative learning, where it's not about just having the knowledge and having the skills, but luckily it's how we show that we've got those skills and how we transform it into the real world. We've come into this big stage now of technology enhanced learning. Wow, this is massive. It's growing incredibly. during COVID-19, it demonstrated, however, how ill-equipped we were to transfer into the virtual world. We thought we could just transfer everything into the virtual world, but we can't. And I was attending a large seminar last week about how we need to go back to some face-to-face clinical teaching and clinical assessment. Despite all our advances in medical education and virtuality and e-learning, we're actually not that very good assessing the students in their clinical situation. We have to change that. We've moved into this new learning area as well, where new things like humanities of medicine, the bioethics of medicine and healthcare, all of those are changing. We've come into patient safety issues. We can't stick to the old models anymore. We have to change. And it's only if we educate our faculty that we can change. Just by having the doctor and saying, well, everything is changed, therefore you must teach in a different way. If they don't know those new ways of teaching, they cannot do that. So the last, I suppose, slide I have is, why do we need faculty development? Is because we owe it to society. We are now this enormous global community where effective professional development and education drives efficient and effective healthcare. When you think about it, the future of our health lies in the hands of our teaching faculty. It's been shown many, many times before that good education, good faculty development is directly proportional to effective healthcare. We cannot get away from that research finding. But do we actually pay enough attention to faculty? I don't think so. So this is why I'm so passionate about faculty development. And that faculty development is not got to be unequal. We see major changes in faculty development in the UK, in the US, in Australia, and probably in some parts of Africa. But in the vast majority of the world, it is really not seen. In India, I think I'm seeing changes now happening. It's lovely to hear Dr. Vedprakash talking about competency-based education. I'm sure he wouldn't have talked about that 30 years ago because we weren't thinking that way. And it's lovely to hear that. But at the same time, you have to deliver that competency-based education. So what do we need to do to ensure that we are developing appropriately? Well, I think there are several things. Whilst we don't wish to produce that professional clone, we don't want all of our doctors to be same. We do need to produce this diversity of health professionals with common core standards, but with an ability to adapt to a changing world. Our students now, when they graduate, must be fit for purpose, fit for practice, and ready and equipped for the real crazy world that we're living at the moment. COVID-19 is not going to be the last challenge we face. There'll be a COVID-20 and a COVID-21, plus lots of other challenges. We've got to be ready for those. And it's only if we have good teaching, learning, and assessment that we will be ready. Only that. I think I've put down a few bullet points of the minimum requirements that we need, I think, for faculty development. And the minimum requirements, I think, that all medical schools and all healthcare professional schools should, I'm not saying must, because I can't say must, should adhere to. I think we should agree that faculty development is not a luxury anymore. It's not something that's nice to have. It's essential to have. It's an imperative for every higher training establishment. It requires either a unit or a department staffed with respected faculty, developers who are academic role models. Teaching and learning is not just an art anymore, it's a science. and we are a clinical science and a non-clinical science. We're combined. And that science has to have scholarly development. It has to have a scholarly basis. It has to have research. It has to have advancement. It has to have higher degrees. So faculty development must have this departmental organized structure. It's got to have a systematic structure involving planning, implementation, and evaluation. I think the COVID-19 has showed many, many ways that we can teach our students. We're really missing out. We've not researched these, and hopefully we will. One of the problems that we might have in a new normal is falling back into the old normal, where we did things as we always done for the last 20 years. COVID-19 has been a dreadful problem. But if you think on the positive side, if it makes us think about how we're teaching, how we're delivering education, then that's something that's been worthwhile. It doesn't substitute for all the sad losses that we have, and I don't mean to be rude when I say that, but I think COVID-19 should have made us think and move and transform. The outcomes of faculty development should be realistic and measurable, i.e. task orientated. So it's very specifically not about just, well, you've just got to be a good teacher. There's a science behind education as well, which we need to develop and produce. One of the things that I think faculty development really needs to do is to be tailored to suit the needs of individuals, disciplines, and the institution, plus address the needs of the community it serves. It's a bit like the social accountability of faculty development. It needs to address the community it serves. Activities should encourage experiential learning and reflection, peer evaluation, portfolios. As I said, it's a science, not just an art. Okay. Reward systems need to be in place, and I don't think that we really mean financial rewards. We've been working very closely in AMY with our China office, and there we see that as students of education develop, as our faculty develop, they're rewarded in professional ways for their scholarly activity. They're rewarded through their professional development. And our new students who have been taking their masters and PhDs in higher education programs will be rewarded with an academic scholarship that promotes them from associate professor to full professor. Faculty development should strive for collegial collaboration across medical disciplines. And it's wonderful today that we have such a wide and varied and diverse audience. To work together, we learn together. Sharing is very much caring. And I think we've got to work together. We've had to work, I think, together in COVID to eliminate COVID. I don't think we've worked very well together. I didn't think it's a lot of activities is collaborative and collegiate. And I think some of the big issues that surround COVID-19 in America, in the US, is because we've not worked properly. They've not worked properly with the rest of the world. So I think we do have to be collaborative, collegial, and international. I just want to leave you with a few thoughts of mine. A good educator opens the door to learning. A better educator helps guide the students through the door without harm. An even better educator explores with the student what is on the other side of the door. To do that, though, we've actually got to open that door. We've got to use the keys. And as I was writing this presentation the other day, I thought keys, yes. And I put it down for keep educating your staff. Keys, keys. If we keep educating our staff, we will open the door. We will be able to help the students go through that door to learning. We will walk through that door with them. I learn just as much when I'm teaching as I do in the teaching. I learn a lot from the other people. So I want to go, not only open that door, I don't only want to guide the student that door, I want to be with them on the other side of the door. So I've spoken a little bit about the importance of faculty development today. And I do think it fits in very clearly what we've said with the bioethics. I do believe that bioethics is an essential element within any curriculum. And as Dr. Russell and I were talking about the other day, it must be some sort of golden thread that goes through the whole of the curriculum. So I want to say thank you very much for listening today. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you, Dr. Trevor Gibbs. We are living like ostrich, burying our head in the world of educational ignorance, especially in medicine. As said by Dr. Mithila Dayanti in the chat box, teaching is no more an art, but is an science. Thank you, Dr. Gibbs, for highlighting the importance of faculty development, especially in the era of competency-based medical education and the dynamic world of change required to keep up with the technological advances. Thank you, sir. Our busy schedules, multiple responsibilities, and shortage of resources leads to health professions education becoming a challenge. To discuss the opportunities and challenges in health professions education in our setting, I invite our own faculty, Dr. Santosh Salagare, for the same. He is the professor and unit head and in charge of hypertension services at St. GS Medical College and KM Hospital, Mumbai. He is the co-convener of the MCN Nodal Center Curriculum Committee member of the National Faculty, Indian Program of UNESCO Chair in Bioethics, HAIFA. He has conducted 141 workshops on communication skills and 49 workshops on professionalism and bioethics throughout the country till date. He has undertaken innovative medical education projects for UG and PG students. He is the author of the chapter on communication skills for the API Textbook of Medicine 2019 and has various publications of bioethics and medical education. He is the faculty for MCA Basic or Advanced Course and GSMC MUHS Institute. He is a trainer of trainers of communication skills for MUHS Nashik. Dr. Salagare, please.
Good afternoon all. Thank you, Naina, for the kind introduction. At the outset, let me thank all the August gathering which is here, along with the distinguished mentors of mine who are sitting. Let me start with Honorable Vice Chancellor Sir and Professor Vedprakash Sir, because they are the mentors and they have mentored us all throughout the journey of our bioethics mission, which Professor Russell D'Souza Sir initiated in 2015 in MUHS, and I am party to it since that day. My Dean Sir and my Academic Dean Sir and my HOD always encouraging me to take this task of bioethics, disseminating the information, and also to contribute in student education, both UG and PG, and in faculty development. And the speaker previous to me, I got fascinated by your thought process and the key points you have given to such an excellent presentation, Trevor Sir. It was amazing listening to you. My bioethics unit secretary, Maria, Mary Matthew and Derek, the pillars of Indian program of bioethics, and distinguished colleagues and students who are sitting in this audience. A warm welcome from GSMC again once more. Let me start. When it was decided that this particular seminar would happen, I thought, what should I talk about? Because yes, as the topics went on, I decided that me as a teacher, because I'm a clinician, But at the same time, I'm a hardcore teacher, and I just on 21st of September completed my silver jubilee as a teacher. So then I decided that let me talk that in pandemic, what I am doing as a medical teacher. And hence, the agenda would go as introduction and current status of pandemic. Where do the UG/PG teaching and assessment stands as on today? What is students' feedback on teaching, learning and assessment? What are the challenges and ways to overcome them? And what are the opportunities in online training? So with this agenda, we will start. Now let me go back to 26th February 2020. 9 months from now approximately, I was invited by Honorable VC Sir and Co-VC Sir in presence of the entire Indian program team led by Dr. Rasal D'Souza Sir for a faculty development in bioethics. And from that day till today, that is 9 months from now, I was not involved much into bioethics training programs. And in the informal talk, many of you asked me that Santosh, we were missing you for 9 months. And here I am again to deliver a talk on this important aspect. Now in these 9 months, yes, my patients going happily home, my team getting trained along with me, and every day we are learning something new in this pandemic, not only in the clinical aspect, but in the humanity aspect, in the bioethics aspect, in the professional behavior aspect, in counseling and communication aspect. So that is what is important. And then, after completing 240 days of continuous COVID clinical work, where are my undergraduate students? Where are the clinical rotations? Are we actually be able to teach and train our postgraduate students and give them justice? These are the questions which are disturbing me every day and night. So with that, as you know, as a clinician and as a medical educationist and with a managerial background, obviously respected Dean Sir and my HOD Sir gave me the task of creating 3 COVID ICUs and 11 COVID ward facilities, and obviously along with that logistic management. Now this continuous work during the lockdown period was a challenge for not only me, but obviously the entire institution and similar such institutions across the country and maybe across the globe. Obviously, because a new disease, a new entity like a pandemic to be handled once in a lifetime, the training of my own postgraduate students, not only my department, but across all the departments, and in the middle of the night, the employees which are coming to assist us, see the timing, 10:30 p.m. So this is what had happened. And the teacher in me was coming out in the middle of the night like this. But then we have to go back and see the figures. These figures are not to scare any one of you, but this is the reality, not only of our city, the state, India, but entire globe. The upsurge of or spikes, so-called spikes of new cases and unfortunate daily deaths, which hundreds of which I have witnessed, few of them I have handled with my own hands. That is what is disturbing. And if you see the corner, a very small font, but this is yesterday's report of Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai, where the cases which were in 500 numbers in a week of Diwali are now 1,300 plus. So to me as a teacher, the students of our MBBS, our first MBBS took my interview for a magazine. And they asked me, because they are about to go to in second year, they asked me, sir, when do you feel our clinical rotation would start? I was speechless. The students of first MBBS who wants to finish their exams and want to go for a second MBBS clinical posting are enthusiastic, are waiting for the opportunity with patient interaction, because what they have learned to foundation course, and I know that excellent contribution by Ved Prakash sir put in that particular document of AdCom, and my mentor, Supesh sir, whatever efforts have happened, and for that, the E part, which gets dedicated to Rasaid D'Souza sir, what has happened is this question in each teacher's mind, that are we or will we be able to teach our students the way we used to teach before? And when we talk about, sir has beautifully told about, narrated rather, what is CBME. And the essence of CBME is student-centric curriculum. All of you will agree that when it is student-centric curriculum, then it is very important that students' feedback on learning during pandemic. When this question came in my mind, I said, if it is an online era, let me also use an online tool and be in touch with my students who were doing first clinical posting in my batch to ask them what is their feedback on the current learning during the pandemic. So I did this, and in the last week, I gave them 24 hours to express their views or rather feedback, which is on various aspects of the learning which is happening. And when I asked them the first question, that do you feel that your learning has suffered adversely, 84.3% students have categorically said that yes, their learning has severely hampered. Now, when we say that, the next question was, why so? What challenges they are facing when they are learning during pandemic? From my side, I had given the options such as feasibility, infrastructure availability, time constraint. However, this, the rainbow which you are seeing of different responses by them is telling us that students are facing several issues or challenges when they are talking about online learning during the pandemic. Now, yes, feasibility of joining or getting learned by the online mode, they have hardly done any time before. It may have been done only as a part of their self-directed learning in the first year, and the subsequent batches have never gone through such a kind of online teaching. The infrastructure, because they are coming from the remote areas of Maharashtra or other states, whether the internet has uninterrupted internet facilities available, and comes the matching their daily routine, and then came one after the other several responses which I am going to analyze. I got astonished by the responses, and it revolves because these responses are from third minor, third major, and from second MBBS students, and the ones who are from the first MBBS going to go in a first clinical posting. And it revolves around the question of only theory from online teaching. Where is the practical? Where is the patient exposure? Where is the humanity? Where is the bioethics? But I think today is the 31st seminar, and I think we should have more and more seminars of bioethics through all the units nationwide, sir, for the students exclusively, so that these soft skills, they are continuously learning when they are away from us, when this COVID challenge is there in our country and in the world. So when I was thinking about my frontline corona warriors, that is my PG students, who are again for last 240 days from the Department of Medicine, I have taken an example, and then again came that yes, they are working as a frontline corona warriors, my postgraduate students, but their PG subject related learning has suffered adversely to the tune of 83.3%. It's a remarkable thing. It's a thing which we have to teach. We as teachers have to introspect and have to go further and plan for them. And when I asked them, obviously, time constraint was the major factor because they are working in COVID 6 hours per day, and then subsequently, currently though the duration has increased, similar thing has happened to the other department resident postgraduate students, not only from the specialty but from the super specialty. So when no life, what happened? This question was pertaining to online training. Yes, they are learning about COVID maybe they have become champions of champions for COVID management. But what about their subject as a medicine learning? Then the issue comes of no live cases. Most of the inputs by the students mention that it's a theory teaching ultimately online. Though we say that is a practical class or case presentation, the discussion and the inputs unfortunately revolve around the theory aspects. So then, when this is the issue, what is my role as a teacher? And this question needs to be asked by each and every teacher, right from first MBBS to the final MBBS, also to the intern community, and also from all other health profession branches such as occupational therapy, physiotherapy, where Maria is doing the excellent job in COVID areas along with a team of postgraduates, and also the nursing, isn't it? And dentistry. So then, when we say this, what is important is that we have to, we as teachers, we as facilitators in an online training program have to match curricular objectives and assessment, which is not happening or which is happening at a very, very, very minor aspect. Then important comes the issue of synchronous and asynchronous teacher-student interaction and the engage. That is what is encouraged. What is important by this online teaching? Are we promoting higher order of thinking skills and communication skill? So that is another agenda which we as a teacher should think of. Are we using the online platform and various modalities of online platform to create a teamwork and cooperation among the students? Now, recently, as an NMC advanced course co-convener, we conducted in our institute training program for 30 teachers. And from the Zoom app, we used groups which are there for giving them tasks. And it worked very well. So for small group teaching, the groups which are allotted from the Zoom meeting give us a very important aspect of interactivity, teaching them teamwork and cooperating with each other. And that is what we have to encourage. Obviously, this is the online learning is going to be active learning. And that is where we are not the ones which are going to give a PPT presentation to them. And then we will say, read the PPT and study on your own. That is not the way. And that is why the active learning has to happen. To go further, what is important? Now, this great word which is used in the CBME curriculum, self-directed learning. In a real way, I think the CBME had taught us what is self-directed learning, but the practicality of it, the actual implementation of self-directed learning is coming in the COVID era. Because we are supposed to use this phrase of self-directed learning to the maximum capacity. Then definitely, what is important is, unless we assess them, there is not going to be zeal of learning. And that is why creating the modalities of online formative and summative assessment must be actually practiced. For that, there has to be inputs and actual activities by the teachers themselves. Then, what is important is, in a classroom or in a small group discussions or in a clinical posting, wherever we are giving feedback. Now, in an online session like this, the feedback has to be given to the student, because that is the feedback is the one which is actually going to be like a lubricant in the engine of learning. So that is also very important. Now, in all these things, if the teachers themselves have to do effectively time management, because again the constraints of online apps, the investment in that, the money which is involved in that, and that is why it has to be a focused teaching, and then which is giving rise to self-directed learning. Obviously, what is important is we are busy. Like suppose clinicians, now third-year teachers, we are busy managing COVID patients, but at the same time, when we are doing efforts to teach students, we have to communicate high expectations from the student, because the students I can frankly say from our country, we are used to a didactic kind of a teaching or spoon feeding like a teaching. That teacher is teaching, students are learning. Now it's the other way. Student may have to read, and then in online period of slots, they may ask the questions. So that is where the issue comes up. high expectations from the students. And obviously, diversity is a hallmark of our country. And when the students have such a diverse talent, and I think in the introduction of our unit, Maria showed beautifully the talents of the students. So in the online teaching, how can we use these diverse talents and also constraints of some students who cannot effectively communicate on an online mode? That is where it is a very important aspect. And then comes online, whether we can implement robust mechanism of monitoring and mentoring. I think the entire process of this particular curriculum development in COVID has to be monitored. Are we going in the right track? And also the mentoring aspect of the students and for the junior faculty, both needs to be considered. So when we say this, what are the factors which influence effectiveness of online learning? Technical skills. We as teachers, all teachers may not be actually well versed with the online platforms. Some of the platforms we have learned during this COVID pandemic, isn't it? Academic skills. We have to now focus that in a given time, how I will do well. Sustaining learner motivation. I think this is very important. If in that contact section of online, if the learner is not motivated to study further, the entire exercise is going to be futile. Administrative issues, social interactions of a teacher, time management, managing technical problems. Now, every time you cannot be dependent on a technical person to correct. You yourself need to gear up, understand that app, for example, Zoom, for example, Google, or Meet. So we cannot say that every time the technical team may be available. Cost, in a given constraint, developing country like India, what we can do best, what we can have in our institution, which will disseminate and which will restart online training to the maximum. Accessibility to internet, quality of course design, that is very important. Because you cannot just do the online teaching for sake of doing it. There has to be a quality part component in these particular aspects. And we cannot just go on bombarding students with multimedia material. For that, what variations we will use, actually whether we use videos or pictures, all that will depend. So, a few points. Now, there is a terminology as a flipped online classroom. The roles are reversed in pandemic or when we are teaching online class. That students read the material at home before the online class given in an online format to the student by the teacher, and then in the online classroom, the time is there to not to teach but to discuss, clarify concepts, and create what is important is awareness of the various difficulties or maybe applied knowledge. That is what is important, and not giving them theory aspect in the online sessions. Obviously here what is important is the role of teacher and student, both are very important. Teacher will have to do homework and then student will have to study that particular topic, come with the questions and queries, and then teacher's skill to facilitate such sessions, and that is why the role is of both. Synchronous online learning. Now this is very important, that teacher and learner has to be engaged at the same time for the motivation, for the sustainability of the zeal of learning. And what is important is, particularly in online learning, it is not that put in on a website of a college the lectures and expect that the students will learn by themselves. That way the teaching will never occur. So it is not just an e-learning, it has to be synchronous online learning. Now when we say that, there is something called as blended learning or a hybrid learning, where learning which integrates online learning with conventional face-to-face learning. And I think all of you will agree that in a postgraduate health professional education, this mode of learning, teaching learning tools we have to use, that yes, they have seen a patient, non-COVID, COVID patients, discussion of that in online platform will definitely help. Now, what is important? I love this statement of assessment drives learning. If there is no assessment, there is no learning. So then, I ask the students question that are you comfortable with the online assessment of the subject which is happening currently during the pandemic? Now, these are the responses from undergraduate students. 45.5% of the students said no, that they are not comfortable with current online assessment which is going on. Then I went ahead and asked them that suppose in university practical examinations and in the surge of patients keep on occurring in our country or our state, then practical examination, is it feasible for you to perform or university to take? This is the question asked to the students. Again, the reply came as no, or they are not sure, they are confused that what could happen in their practical exam, they are not clear about it. So these are the things which are coming out from the feedback of the students. So what is important? For me as a clinician, online teaching, and we do innovations, and the team can teach, we can have Zoom meetings, we can have group activities, but assessment in clinical study, to me, currently, with whatever is going around, it's really a myth. Are we really going to assess them clinically if the second surge comes and if the number of cases go on increasing and the next 3 months to 6 months go like this? That's the question. And then that's where the university and Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, Pro Vice Chancellor are working day and night on this agenda of assessment during COVID. Now, what we should do as a teachers? What is important? That when I took myself this, I decided that I will take this talk. If I kept on talking without knowing the students' perspective about this topic, I would have failed in my duty. And that is why obtain feedback in the online settings on the online teaching learning. That is what I have learned from this particular task which is given to. So thank you, sir. This was a learning for me also, that I could learn that I cannot just go on creating online sources for them. At the same time, I have to understand what are students' expectations. So the last few key messages which I learned rather is we have to now have a purely a student-centric approach while planning online or maybe offline if permissible teaching learning during COVID. Innovations need to be appreciated. The collaborations have to come, and whoever is doing best practices, maybe at the platform of our institution or at the platform of university, we have to share best practices so that we learn from each other what best can be done. Obviously, stakeholders' feedback, not only students, teachers' feedback, and the management feedback, the university feedback, all these aspects are very important. So basically, we need to accept COVID as reality, and we have to learn as a teacher how to teach during pandemic. I think that is what is the key message. These are the few important readings, and obviously, luckily, last week only, a very important document from NMCN has come related to online teaching, what we as teachers are supposed to do. So some of the inputs are from there also. So I thank my own bioethics unit, because in 2015, when that time Sir Supesh sir gave me this task and he sent me to university for learning, I went there with Padmaja Marathi, and then instead of me keeping this particular post of head of the unit of bioethics, I started giving the baton to the next person. And because of that, I tell you, the unit has become, sir, so stronger. Today you must be proud. You saw the achievement of our bioethics unit, one of the best unit. Mary Madam said that this is one of the best unit of our country, where the humanity, professionalism, bioethics, under the able leadership of Prasad D'Souza sir, we are continuing further. Thank you so much. Take care. Be safe. Thank you.
We are all aware of the challenges faced by health professionals in the era of COVID-19. I would like to thank Dr. Santosh for clarifying the effect of the pandemic on students' learning, especially the focus on theory in online teaching learning methods and the lack of practicals, patient exposure and soft skill development in both undergraduate and postgraduate students by the survey what he has done, and how a little bit of innovation can help in improving it. Thank you so much, Dr. Santosh. We will go on towards the question answer session now. We have asked for any questions to be put up. So I will start with Dr. Mishra. Dr. Ved Prakash Mishra, sir.
Dr. Ved Prakash is...
okay, then I will move on to Dr. D'Souza. What is the stand of human challenge trials and one day sooner in pregnant patients, children and geriatric age group?
Well, that is certainly sorry. Dr. Nayana, the question was what? Can you repeat that question?
Yeah. You
talked.
Hello.
Yeah. What? Yeah. Just repeat that.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can.
What is the stand of human challenge trials and one-day tuna in pregnant patients, children, and geriatric age group patients as participants?
Yeah, you see, the One Day Sooner is an organization of volunteers only volunteering for the human challenge trials. They are the ones who take on the role of willing to give themselves up and for the benefit of everyone to take the infection. Now, as per the ethics requirements, we have to minimize risk. And for that matter, most of all the trials seem to exclude pregnancy and certainly the very young and the very old. These are excluded, and you'll see that that's one of the issues, not just for the human challenge trials, but even for the phase 3 placebo-controlled studies. This group of people are always left out, but they certainly are not. One Day Sooner doesn't. I don't think that's pregnant and those vulnerable groups are included there.
Thank you, sir. The next question is for Dr. Gibbs. Most of the medical teachers always have a scarcity of time and resources. How can we integrate faculty development in their busy schedules? And in the West, have you noted slight resignation or apathy towards medical bioethics training?
I heard that first question, which is about trying to fit in faculty development. I think that it's an understandable question because everybody is busy and even more busier in these times than previously. But I think it also comes back to recognizing what faculty are about. And whilst you are a clinician, if you have a responsibility for teaching, you have that responsibility to faculty development. Many universities around the world have created different opportunities. I can talk quite freely about how we've done it within the UK, which is to have a contract with our clinicians, which points out that part of their time is set aside for teaching and learning or faculty development, so that they remain in the same position, but perhaps when we divide the week up into 2 11ths or 2 afternoons are dedicated to teaching, learning, and their own personal development in faculty development. And I think it's up to the higher authorities within the universities to sort that one out. I don't think we should be just fitting in faculty development as and when we're free. The same as I don't think we should just be fitting in teaching and learning on the hoof as and when we're free. It's much more important than that. And what I was trying to get over today is the importance of that. I didn't quite understand or didn't quite hear the second half of the question, Maria, sorry.
I think Professor Gibbs, it's about apathy towards bioethics.
I was asking, in the West, have you noted any slight resignation or apathy towards bioethics training?
I can't say that I have, but I think it's coming along the basis because we've now become very aware of patient safety. And I think patient safety is leading the way. Even in our annual conferences now, we have so many presentations about patient safety, patient come first, patient most important. So I think pinned onto the back of that, we're seeing a growing interest in the bioethics of everything that we do with and for and by patients. So I don't think I've recognized that. Certainly in other parts of the world, however, and some of the more distant parts of the world, then this takes a very, very low priority. It's still a situation where the doctor knows best. The doctor just does something to the patient and the patient says, thank you very much. So it's what is seen in the UK, I don't think is translated into the whole world. So yes, I have seen that apathy. And I think it's part of an ethical situation that we shouldn't see that apathy continue to exist. The ethics of education should be that we make everything equal and on in a very equal basis, equal footing.
Thank you so much, sir. Question from Dr. Joseph Philip Raj, and this is open to the panel. Is there any interim report on the outcomes of EdCom modules in medical institutions?
Can I take this?
Yes, please, Dr. Santosh.
Because we as Nodal Center are involved in training of the teachers in advanced course in medical education and also in the Regional FEMR Institute. Last 2 years, what we have seen is right from the time the vision about this particular competency-based medical education was put forth, several teachers are coming up with the projects related to ADCOM. Communication skill, bioethics, professionalism related innovative medical education products are coming up in large number to these advanced courses throughout the country. Yes, we'll have to wait a little for actually getting the authentic results. Because of COVID last year, they could not complete. Now this particular last year, they have completed all the estimates which were pending. So, sir, definitely we will come up with some publications related to various faculty members who are doing SEME or doing famous regional fellowships. Will come up in the context of CBME. What is the result? We are really looking for that particular kind of publications coming up. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr.
Nayana, I
Next question is also for
question.
you. Currently, all the teaching is going on online. And I think we are becoming more familiar with it. We are innovating in it. But how do you foresee the teaching learning in the health professions post-COVID? Because till now, we're not doing any much of online teaching. Now it has become. So what changes do you foresee in the future post-COVID?
Now, thank you for that question. It is very important to understand that we need to change. I think Trevor sir has mentioned categorically, an entire slide was dedicated for this change, which is inevitable. The entire world is changing in the form of not only medical education, but in public relations, in family, in elderly care, in care of a child. So this whatever is happening for good. Hopefully COVID-20 or COVID-21 should not come, but the mental preparedness of community at large is started happening, and definitely it will have a role in medical education also, or health profession education also, because when we are talking about all these new modalities, innovations in teaching and assessment, at the same time the teachers are getting faculty development themselves. The departments and institutions and universities are arranging faculty development in online teaching, learning and assessment. University will play a key role in guiding us on assessment aspect. So definitely there will be a change for good, and change so that completely, we are dependent on whatever we were dependent on didactic or spoon feeding type of a teaching will go away, and a big role of self-directed learning, which is a very important keyword in CBME, will come up. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may add to that, I think it is important that we learn from this situation what we can do and what we can't do, and what is possible and what is not possible. And if we don't do that, then we'll go back to the old normal. So there's been some fantastic advances in virtual online learning, but they're not the answer to everything. And if we think they are, then we're going to be crashing down. We have to learn from everything that we do. And I do take the point of self-directed learning. In fact, I don't call it that. I would prefer to call it directed self-learning. Because if you tell the students, well, just go off and learn it, they will not. But if you tell them why they need to learn it and point them in the right direction, guide them through that door, then they will. So I think the whole thing about COVID-19 is learning from the situation. If we don't learn from it, we're in a mess.
Thank you, Dr. Santosh and Dr. Gibbs. Not many questions, but I have...
No, Dr. Nayana, I got a question. Someone has sent me a question, Dr. Madhava Sethi, and this is to Dr. Trevor Gibbs. What's the best method to evaluate trained faculty? A lot of faculty undergo training through 4 days training courses. They get a certificate, but it's also important to know from students whether they are really satisfied from teaching imparted to them. So what's the best technique to judge whether trained faculty has actually brought about change in teaching skills that proved very beneficial to the students? That's Dr. Madhava Shetty, some professor of microbiology.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shetty. That's a really important question, really important, and thank you for bringing that up. And of course, the evaluation of our teachers has been on the front burner for many, many years, and we really haven't got it wrong. The evaluation that we often do is short term. The evaluation that we often do is from the students, and both we know is not true to life. The evaluation from the students is not really reliable, simply because the students will evaluate the teacher in a good way because they're worried about writing not so good evaluation, particularly if it's near to exam time. The evaluation very close to the encounter is also poor. There is a gentleman called Kirkpatrick who invented 4 levels of evaluation. And we often evaluate at that first level, but really the evaluation should be what effect has that teaching had on the student's progress? What effect has that teaching had on the student's ability to move forward and graduate? And so we forget that a lot of our evaluation has got to be long-term effects rather than just catching the students as they leave the lecture theatre, etc. So I think one of the things that I would suggest for the best way is to think about what effect that learning or the new learning or the old learning or that teacher has had on the students in terms of taking them forward into their new careers. And we can do that. There's a very good studies about long-term effects. And sometimes it's strange that the teacher that you think is passionate and says the right words is not the one that produces the long-term effects. It's the teacher that encourages lifelong learning, that encourages the students to think as self-directed learners. It's the ones that students are engaged within active learning rather than passive learning, in deep learning rather than superficial learning. It's those faculty that create that situation in the students that then has long-term effects. They're the ones that we need to be looking at, those models of evaluation.
I think one of the other things, Trevor, that I'm trying to, at least Amy, the best evidence medical education program that we have. I for one, we are doing, as far as the bioethics, we are trying to have evaluation on the learning that's taking place. So there is this whole area of evidence-based teaching, and which I think is because from what I could see, all along, our basis has been anecdotal evidence. I'm a good teacher, I teach. And when we actually look at evidence, then it might not be so accurate to the anecdotal belief. Yeah. And I think this whole area of evidence-based teaching we are trying to bring that, and I hope we will bring into the Indian program a much more importance given to evidence-based teaching. And I think Trevor might be able to expand more. You have got the best evidence medical education group there. Is that right, Trevor?
Yeah, we have the BEME group, Best Evidence.
Yeah, I'm sort of involved with that. Yes.
You're quite right. This best evidence medical teaching is in a way a growing trend now. But again, it's looking at what, as our previous speaker, previous questioner, Dr. Mishra said, is trying to find what is the best. And it's not these short-term evaluations, it's the longer-term evaluations where you look at the students 5 or 6 years down the line and said, what impressed you most? What impressed you a lot? What gave you that confidence? What did you take forward? And who was it who helped you do that? Not so much the teacher, but how, the techniques as well. You know, there are all faculty now need to have a toolbox of learning methodologies rather than just having our lectures. And I think this is one of the things that virtuality is brought about. We can't just teach everything online, the same as we just can't teach everything by lectures. We have to develop that toolbox. And the best lecturers, the best teachers, should I say, are the ones who enable that toolbox to be open. They open that toolbox and demonstrate the various ways that our students learn. And I think that's coming out now in the best evidence-based teaching.
Thank you so much.
Also, probably what Trevor said is reflections from the student. Dr. Mary, you read out last time some of your the students who had the ethics, who are now in United States or in New York and elsewhere, writing back and telling you, giving their, I think that's very powerful because they're not now under your, having to please you, but telling you what impact that learning has over the time, and now they're experiencing it years later in the job or in the education or whatever they're doing in another country. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, Dr. Trevor, I just wanted to tell you, we had a program in bioethics under the student wing, which was called Helping Hands, Helping Minds. And what we did is we took our students to a school, a residential school that was for the disadvantaged children. They were children who were of laborers. When they go for work, they used to leave the children at the residential school. And in the residential school, these children, they are taught, they're given vocational training so that they can survive. And I had taken my students there and we did a short street play on what I call participatory theater. That is, we put up a short skit in the local language about ethics, about right and wrong of an action. And the students dramatized it, and then we asked the children to give a feedback on what is right and wrong. And this was under the leadership of the first student wing leader of the bioethics unit. And he's currently doing pediatrics in New York State University. So just a few months ago, I had to present a project, and I wrote to him and I said, would you give me a feedback on how bioethics had helped in shaping your career? So he had written that he currently works as a resident in New York, where it caters to the lower socioeconomic class. And he said, I was able to empathize with them because of the projects that I had done in bioethics and how we were able to relate with the children and relate with the lower strung, the lower strata of the society. So he was able to tell me that it really shaped his career because of what he had done when he was a student. So that was something like a long, feedback which came after 2-3 years after he left this institution.
And it's a reflection,
and he gave a reflection.
I think also that's a great example, Mary. And I think one of the things that we have to learn is for too many years we've stayed in the ivory tower of our university. We need to move out of that ivory tower into the real world. And as I said early on in my talk, fit for purpose and fit for practice is fine. But if the students are not ready for the real world, and they don't even know what that real world is because they stay in the ivory tower, then they'll never be ready. And I think yours is a great example of immersing the students into the real life of what's going on out there, to get a feel for real people, to empathize with real people, to sympathize with difficult situations and see that real world. Then I think you've got ready for the real world practitioners.
Thank you. That was a very good way of developing empathy in the students, Dr. Mary. Congratulations to you. I have one question now for our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir. Are you there? Dr. Maisekar, sir? Perhaps Dr. D'Souza can take this question then. There is now an overlap of bioethics module and EdCom modules. Has any thought been given by any expert committee to eliminate the repetition or integrate the two? Because
I think I'll take that. I'll take that, Naina.
Modules for the training of the undergraduate students, and now we have got this new EdCom modules which have come up. So Dr. Mary can answer this.
I can answer for that because there is an overlap. We've been seeing an overlap, and I think the best person to answer this actually is Dr. Ved Prakash.
I kept a question for him, but he's not there.
But I think he is aware of it, and he is making even, I think some changes are going on even in the new module that he is recommending. There are some additions, and because we did have this, we did feel that there are repetitions in the module. So that is to be addressed to actually Dr. Ved Prakash, and we will tell him, we will inform him about that.
Thank you everyone for that lovely session and for the fantastic inputs given by all on such a plethora of topics. Now I will invite Dr. Anjali Telang, our secretary, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Honorable Vice Chancellor, MUHS and Head of Maharashtra State Nodal Center UNESCO Chair in Bioethics, Dr. Maisekar sir. Head Asia Pacific Division, Director of Education International Program, UNESCO Chair in Bioethics, HAIFA, Dr. Russell D'Souza sir. The Head Indian Program and Council Member, Department of Education, Dr. Mary Matthew ma'am. Our distinguished speakers today, Dr. Ved Prakash Mishra sir, Dr. Trevor Gibbs sir, and Dr. Santosh Salagare sir. Our respected Dean, Dean sir, Dr. Deshmukh, and our academic Dean sir, Dr. Nadkar sir, and all the respected faculty members and students of all colleges who have joined us today. A very good afternoon to all of you. I, on behalf of SAIT GSMC MUHS UNESCO Bioethics Unit, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all speakers for gracing your important work and sharing with us your findings and opinions today. We would like to thank Dr. Russell D'Souza, sir, for giving an informative talk on various ethical issues involved in human challenge trials of COVID-19. Sir highlighted many gray areas involved in these trials. Thank you, sir. We would also like to thank Dr. Mishra, sir, for explaining how the bioethics topics, bioethics principles have been integrated in a phase-wise manner in 8Com module for all professional years. He also highlighted the importance of having bioethics as one of the important components in undergraduate education. Thank you very much, sir. We must mention our deep sense of appreciation for Dr. Gibbs for delivering an informative talk on faculty development. Sir explained how important it is for having effective and efficient healthcare. So the faculty development, each and every institute should think upon and conduct regularly these sessions for developing the faculty for disseminating information to students. Thank you very much, sir. We are grateful to our own faculty, Dr. Santosh Salagare, sir, for giving an informative talk on health professions, education, opportunities and challenges. Sir highlighted the challenges of online teaching learning faced by faculty members and undergraduate and postgraduate students during COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you, sir. We are all inspired by your great works. We would like to express our sincere thanks to Dr. Russell D'Souza, sir, and Dr. Mary Matthew, ma'am, for giving us this wonderful opportunity to organize international seminar by eminent speakers in collaboration with Department of Education. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. We also wish to express our gratitude to our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Maisekar, sir, for taking time out of his busy schedule and addressing us all on this occasion. Thank you, sir. We also would like to acknowledge our gratitude to our Dean, sir, Dr. Deshmukh, and our academic Dean, sir, Dr. Nadkar, for their continuous support and encouragement to our GMU unit. Thank you, sir. I would like to thank Dr. Naina Ingole, ma'am, for moderating this wonderful seminar. Thank you, ma'am. We would like to take this opportunity to place on record our hearty thanks to Dr. Geeta Nadraj, ma'am, Nodal Officer, Regional Resource Center, Western Region, NMCN project, for providing us audiovisual room to conduct this seminar on a virtual platform. We also extend our thanks to Mr. Badal and Mr. Tushar for their cooperation and technical support in conduction of this event. Thank you. We would also like to thank MCGM for funding. Ladies and gentlemen, an event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling weeks ago. It requires planning and a bird's eye for details. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues of GSMC MUHS UNESCO Bioethics Unit and members of Students' Wing. Thank you all. Last but not the least, we would like to thank all the respected faculty members and the students for actively participating in this seminar with great enthusiasm and patience. Thank you all. Once again, I want to state that we are all most grateful to all the speakers. We thank you for being with us this afternoon. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much. Good day.
Thank you. And we shall end. Stay well and stay safe. Okay. And thank you to Dr. Maria, the head of the unit. I am delighted and with your contribution, Dr. Maria. She's attended taking part in the international program, the panel discussion, and appreciate that too. Okay, thank you all. Thank you, Trevor. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Professor Trevor.
And Dr. Maisekar. Thank you, Dr. Maisekar.
Thank you, Santosh.
Santosh.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you virtually.
Thank you, Russell. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dilip.
Thank you very much, all
I'll
of
be in
you.
touch with you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Good day. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye to everybody. Yes.